in 2000. Brian's nose was out of joint, so he got the honor in one of those years. But it took a Mayo woman whose family comes from the Gaeltacht area of Tourmakeady in County Mayo to get her bunch of Leidens together and to bring the first Mayo Irish Woman of the Year from our family into this. Before I introduce Eileen, I just want to make a couple of observations. Eileen, when Paul O'Dwyer was president of the City Council in New York, he happened to notice that there were no department of records. There were files and there were archives going directly into warehouses. So Paul established the Department of Records, and Eileen's mother, Mary, was the very first person to indeed start that as a director. We fast forward for a few years when you'd have somebody like Ray Tatum, who was city clerk in New York, and he lured Eileen into city politics and into City Hall. Eileen would, from there, become the Commissioner of Records and Information from the City of New York, and something we're all very, very proud of. We'd also like to point out that practically anything Eileen has ever touched in her life has turned out to be very terrific and memorable. Just last August, she probably touched another area of her life that makes us all very happy in marrying Dr. Tom Mackell, who is the special advisor to the president of the ILA. Eileen, your mom, Linda, Paul, Kathleen, and the new slew of Mackells in the Flannelly family. Just when we finally got to know the names of the varied grandchildren on the O'Dwyer and Flannelly side, another slew of Mackells are here now. We have to start from square one again. Thank you, that was very, very good. Our daughter Eileen, we love you. We're very proud of you.
Okay, this time I'd like to ask Sarah Lloyd to come up. We're going to present the Mayo Ball to Eileen Mackell. This honor was bestowed upon Eileen Flannelly Mackell, Mayo Woman of the Year, in grateful recognition of years of exceptional service to the Irish community and tireless commitment to the preservation of Irish traditions. The Mayo Society Incorporated of the City of New York, 1879. Anton's, Queens Village, March 14, 2015. Mary B. Lyden, President. Mary P. Coyne Byrne. Rita Lyden Lenz, Chairpersons.
Good evening. Before I get started, I'd really just like to thank President Mary Lyden and Rita, Mary Coyne, Mike Regan, James Prendergast, and all of those who made this event possible tonight. I drove them crazy over the last few months, and I do apologize. They'll attest to that. But putting something like this together is no easy task. I would also like to acknowledge the Executive Board, and in particular, James and Rosemary Lombard, and Anne and John Garvey. I really can't think of the Mayo Society without thinking of them and all of the work that they have put in over the years, not only to the Mayo Society, but everything Irish. They preserve the heritage and the culture for all of them, and they deserve a big round of applause, so thank you. Now, I'm going to try to keep this short because coming from a political family, I do know what it's like to be on the other side, sitting, waiting for the dancing and the food and everything, and somebody just keeps rambling on. But, and no offense to my father and Brian when I say that, but, however, I would be remiss if I didn't express how much being recognized by the Mayo Society and alongside a man such as John Jennings means to me. As many of you know, I represent the third generation of Flannellys from Addie, Mass, and O'Dwyer McNicholas clan from Bahola County, Mayo. From as far back as I can possibly remember, the Mayo Society of New York was cherished with great pride and distinction in our family circle. This honor, as you've heard tonight, puts me in line with family predecessors Grand Uncle Bill and Paul O'Dwyer, cousins Frank Durkin, Brian O'Dwyer, and of course my father, Adrian Flannelly. Those are extremely huge shoes to fill, and I don't pretend to be anywhere in their league. If I'm being thanked here for helping the Irish community, that comes from lessons taught by my parents and family members. Simple lessons, actually. First, the Irish always stick together, and you never forget where you came from. My parents didn't forget, and after making the voyage numerous times, I was probably age 7 when I started grabbing onto my Auntie Eileen's leg and protesting having to come back to the United States. My parents learned quickly that the only way to appease me would be by promising me that I could spend my summers in Dublin with my relatives. The ritual continued into adulthood, and my Uncle David Waters will tell you to this day, I was the only one of his children responsible for his gray hairs. Probably not the thing you want to be remembered for, but at least I made an impression. I should also mention that my earlier travels to Ireland were not what I think would most consider the norm. Every summer, Dad would rent out a minibus and drive around the West Coast collecting relatives and look for a long family outing. He would proceed to then stop at every landmark, gravesite, house, pub, farm, castle, and statue in Mayo, giving us the entire oral history of what each represented and what they meant to the family members. Amongst the sing-songs and chatter, inevitably, and my siblings here can attest to this, 2 things would happen. Dad would convince himself and try to convince all of us that you actually can cut through the field and drive a bus up to the foot of the statue at Croagh Patrick. He was determined to give us the full experience without having to leave the comfort of our bus. Pleas to stop the insanity would fall on deaf ears, and family night would consist of members pushing the rear of the bus out of the sunken fields. I can tell you firsthand, the amazing race had nothing on our adventures. Most recently, this past November, I returned to Mayo for my Uncle Enda's funeral. Unfortunately, our family and County Mayo lost 2 of its finest men when I lost my Uncle Enda Flannelly and Godfather Justice Byrne. The trip had a strong undertone of sadness, but our families joined together in 4 days of laughter, song, and storytelling. And of course, Dad put on his chauffeur's cap and took my sister Linda and myself on the Flannelly tour. We revisited my dad's former home in Carey Castle, the old school where my grandparents stood as principals and my dad often stood in detention, the beach of Innistrone, through Ballina, Pontoon Bridge, the O'Dwyer Cheshire home, and numerous other stops in Mayo. Fortunately, we didn't have time for Croagh Patrick. As we made each stop, I recalled and spoke of my childhood memories from the various locations: summers in Ballina with Grandma Waters, Pontoon Bridge with Frank and Monica Durkin, numerous ceremonies at the O'Dwyer Cheshire home in Innistrone with my Nana and Uncle Enda's caravan at the beach. It was trips like these that always made me reflect on how difficult it must have been for my parents and all those who left Ireland as young teenagers during difficult times to make a better life. I share these thoughts with you by way of acknowledging my deep love for Mayo and Ireland and my utmost respect for this incredible organization. Where most of us get caught up in our daily lives here in New York, you still focus on those left behind and still in need of assistance. To be honored by a group with such an important mission is truly beyond words. I said I would make this short, but I do want to acknowledge and thank all of those who came here this evening to cheer me on. Too many to recognize individually, but in particular, President of the United States Maritime Alliance, Dave Adam, my boss, Charlie Flynn and his wife, Marilyn, the ILA, ACD, all my family and friends, my girlfriends who are anxiously waiting for me to stop talking and dance, and my cousins Brenda Capelli and Jackie O'Hagan, who made the trip from Dublin just to be here for tonight, and my incredible husband, Thomas Mackell, for his incredible love and support. Thank you again.
Thank you, Eileen. Great job. At this time, I'm going to ask Dr. John Jennings Jr. to please come to the podium to introduce his father.